Ryan, what's on your radar?
The first gun control organization in the United States formed after the Civil War as a response by people bothered by the fact that formerly enslaved people were now free and were arming themselves to defend that freedom. It called itself the Ku Klux Klan, and it organized for the first time in 1866. They were often made up of local leaders like sheriffs and judges, and they would use the force of law to disarm black communities before rampaging through them. The so-called black codes that the Klan pushed in the South included laws that specifically banned black people from owning guns, and when federal law intervened, they'd tweak the laws to ban the kind of cheap guns that were affordable to both poor blacks and poor whites, and would set up other legal red tape, similar to poll taxes, aimed at making it technically legal to own a gun, but functionally impossible. So the white terrorists of the South outnumbered the freedmen, but total cowards that they were only able to overwhelm them with violence after they'd first disarmed the people they'd then attack at night. The second push for gun control came about a century later, and again came in the wake of black people arming up in self-defense, particularly after Huey Newton and the Black Panthers began openly carrying firearms, producing images that led Governor Ronald Reagan to start supporting gun control legislation. In 1967, 30 Black Panthers marched on the state capitol to protest that legislation. Don Mulford, a conservative Republican, successfully pushed a bill banning open carry, specifically aimed at the Black Panthers. As Reason magazine reported, the Mulford Act had the support of the NRA. Quote, "I'm sure you are aware that I'm very grateful to the National Rifle Association for its help in making my gun control bill, AB 1591, a workable piece of legislation, yet protecting the constitutional rights of citizens," Mulford wrote in a letter. Quote, "The bill enjoyed the full support of the National Rifle Association," he wrote. So that history helps us understand what the NRA meant by, quote, "good guy," in this famous clip of former head Wayne LaPierre.
The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
So fast forward to 2016, when officers pulled Philando Castile over for a broken taillight in the St. Paul suburbs. He was a licensed gun owner and told the officer he was carrying.
You have your license and insurance?
I do have a firearm on me.
Don't reach for it then. Don't pull it
out.
Don't pull it out.
You just killed my boyfriend. He wasn't reaching.
Don't pull it out!
He wasn't.
Don't move!
The NRA, however, saw no good guy with a gun and stayed conspicuously silent, even under public pressure. More than a year later, after the officer was acquitted, the NRA's Dana Loesch went on CNN and acknowledged the killing as a, quote, "tragedy and awful." Quote, "There are a lot of variables in this particular case, and there were a lot of things that I wish would have been done differently," Loesch said, which is just about the most mealy-mouthed statement you could offer in that situation. 2 years later, E.J. Bradford, a young Army veteran with a license to carry, was in a mall when gunshots broke out. He drew his weapon, just like Wayne LaPierre once, a good guy with a legal gun fighting a bad guy with a bad gun. Cops instantly shot him dead and later blamed him for, quote, "brandishing his weapon." The NRA stayed silent. There have been plenty of other instances. In March 2020, Louisville police smashed their way into the apartment of Kenneth Walker. He was with Breonna Taylor, and he thought that her ex-boyfriend had broken in, so he ran to get his gun, which he was legally permitted to own. Police shot him and also shot and killed Breonna Taylor. The NRA was silent. Last Wednesday, police in the Twin Cities again executed a no-knock warrant, smashing their way into an apartment at the dead of night. Amir Locke was asleep on the couch. Scared for his life and no doubt dazed and delirious from being woken up by armed intruders, he fumbled for his weapon, which he was legally allowed to carry. In 3 seconds, police shot and killed him. To its credit, the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus released a statement demanding an investigation. But the NRA, so far, has been silent. I reached out to them yesterday. I got a note back, automated note saying that they would respond to my request for comment. No response yet from the NRA. you can only begin to imagine how quickly they would be out with statements of support if a white gun owner, licensed to carry, had his door smashed in and was shot dead in 3 seconds by police.
Yeah.
It would be instantaneous.
Yeah, so the charge of hypocrisy here is just absolutely 100% valid.
Breathtaking.
The NRA's, I mean, I support the Second Amendment. I support gun rights. I'm libertarian. I am very against virtually all gun control legislation and measures. The NRA seems like an organization I ought to support. I don't. They have been just appallingly hypocritical. They've also leaned over the years more into sort of culture war battle and just kind of generic rah-rah Republican, rah-rah Trump kind of messaging. Wayne LaPierre is, I think, a terrible and corrupt, actually, leader who took them in a terrible direction. I recommend my friend Tim Mack's book. Actually, we interviewed him a couple weeks ago.
About that book, yeah.
And he has more on the shady details of everything involving them. But yes, they were silent, and they also came up with, I believe, some really BS rationale for why they were not defending Philando Castile. Say, well, because he didn't have the gun. I think they said. I actually have to Google what their exact rationale. It was like, well, he wasn't licensed to carry it or something, which I don't know. It's something like that. Like, well, you think everyone should be aren't you against these kinds of stupid rules? Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Second Amendment, your Second Amendment rights can be, and your life can be taken away.
Yeah.
Due to some weird technicality. Yeah, right. Yeah, we're not buying that.
There's it's a little bit of a parallel with, and I think this is such a shame when single issue advocacy organizations drift and just become generically part of the team. I criticize the ACLU for doing a good deal of this, I think, in recent years, where they're just becoming kind of another Democratic group that is, a little bit more selective about civil liberties because it doesn't want to feud with, start having arguments with other people, and because they're all about opposing Trump and Republicans, et cetera, more than they used to be. The NRA is like that on steroids, and it's
right, and that's where this gets ugly, because if you ask the question of, well, what team do they see themselves as a part of, in which white people have gun rights but black people don't? What team is that?
Well, you alluded to what team that is.
Yes, I think they've become like a weird, like, pro-white, like white nationalist group that has like a significant number of black members. Killer Mike has been an NRA. I don't know if he still is, because I think he
said he might have left it. I think he was frustrated with them over this exact kind of thing.
Yes, and he was also deeply upset at the way he did an interview for them, significantly before the giant march, the gun rights march, that March for Our Lives, and then the NRA sat on it and ran it like an hour before that march. Just to humiliate him and put him at odds with his fan base, who was now marching. So he may have left by now, but for years he was pushing the NRA and trying to say that that everybody should be able to have the benefits of the Second Amendment. I don't agree with him on this particular issue, but that was his position, and he fought that fight, and it was such a lonely one, and got absolutely nothing back from the NRA but hostility.
Yeah, I mean, they don't talk enough about how, serious efforts at gun control in this country, or efforts to disarm people. We have so many guns already out there. Is the problem we face from a crime perspective. So, but any policy of we need to get rid of those guns would involve police action against a lot of low-income minority people in many cases, and what is going to result from that is going to be a lot of police encounters, some of which go wrong, like what we see, which ought to make one a little worried about that approach. But yeah, the NRA is so focused on just a really frustrating culture battle, and they deserve this. They really do. And I support the Second Amendment completely. I'm against most gun control. They're not doing a good job.
All right, well, we will have more Rising right after this. Our panel will be around. Stick around for that.